Good afternoon, everybody. This is Miss Ferguson. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there today to walk you through this presentation in preparation for the assignment, so I thought it would be helpful to prepare this video for you that accompanies the presentation that's embedded into the assignment for today. So hello, and thank you for giving me about 15 minutes of your time. So today's assignment and the next practice activity that you're going to do starting today with Adobe Fresco has everything to do with color theory. There is power in color, and as computer graphics junior designers, color is one of the greatest tools in a designer's toolbox because color has the power to communicate mode instantly. It communicates meaning right away. As soon as your brain sees a color, it has all kinds of associations with it. It thinks, if it sees blue, it's going to think sad, or it's going to think trustworthy. If it sees red, it's going to think caution, stop, or it's going to think live or recording, or it's going to make you a little hungry. So color has this ability to communicate very, very quickly. It can be used to represent any of the 7 principles of design that are in a poster above the whiteboard at the back of the class: unity, harmony, contrast, proportion, movement, balance, and variety. Color can be used to communicate any one of those 7 principles of design, or all of them. And so I'm just going to read from the slide here a little bit more about the power of color. When it comes to communication, color is unbeatable. Unconscious or otherwise, color evokes emotions. It inspires reactions, and it changes the modes of your thinking. It can excite or soothe your mood, raise or lower your blood pressure, even whet your appetite. So if you notice, a lot of the food restaurants that you enjoy will always have some visual of red, because red has been known to whet your appetite or increase salivation. It instantly will make you hungry. Just color psychology alone. Whether it's innate or learned, it is undeniable that color has a vital impact on how we go about our lives. With the basics of the color theory under your belt from the previous assignment, you can approach psychology of individual colors with a bit more nuance. As we've established, color is far from just a visual experience. It can affect your mood, your wants, your reactions, and so forth. However, such a powerful tool is wasted if you don't know how to use it effectively. So here is your basic color wheel. There are primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. You probably know red, green, and blue to be, red, blue, and yellow to be primary colors. But this color wheel serves a different purpose because this is computer graphics. So I'm going to start with the primary colors that we see on this color wheel. They are cyan, magenta, yellow. Cyan, magenta, yellow. CMY. Cyan, magenta, and yellow are 3 of the 4 ink cartridges in every printer that combine to make any other color in the rainbow that has to move through a printer. So it's often abbreviated as C, M, Y, and K. K stands for black. Every single printer around you uses these 4 colors to make the rest of the colors that it has to print. So for this reason, in computer graphics, we call these the primary colors: cyan, magenta, and yellow. The secondary colors in a designer's color wheel will be red, green, and blue. If you take the first initials, you will also get R, G, B. RGB is what we describe as screen color. Your cell phone screen, your computer screen, the iPad tablet screen, your TV screen at home, every computer desktop screen, anything that uses a screen creates color by mixing red, green, and blue. So it is a combination of colors used to create what we see on the screens as color. It is abbreviated RGB. The tertiary colors are the colors that are made from mixing primary and secondary colors. If you've ever had a box of 24 Crayola crayons, you know there are colors like red orange and orange red, yellow orange and orange yellow, green blue and blue green, blue violet. These are all tertiary colors. They are colors that live between primary and secondary colors, and they are named for the two colors that are mixed to create them. So your first level color is primary. Secondary colors are made from mixing two primaries. And your tertiary colors are made from mixing a primary with a secondary. In the color wheel, there are pure colors. The pure colors are referred to as hues. They would be your primary colors, so your cyan, magenta, and yellow. When you're describing a tint of a color, you are taking a hue and you are adding white to it to make it lighter. So if I'm ever walking by your project and I say, oh, you need to tint that color up, that means you need to make it lighter by adding white to it. If you have a tone, I'll say, oh, that has a red tone or a blue tone. There are tones of blue in there, tones of green in there. That means that your pure color is mixed with both white and black. White and black together make a shade of gray. So tones are hues mixed with shades of gray to make them a little darker. Shade, however, is when you add black to a hue to make it darker. So tint is adding white. Toning a color means that you're adding gray to it. Shading a color means that you're adding black to it. Not doing anything with the color is that color in its purest form. So any color here on this color wheel is innately a hue. It's already a hue. If you were to add white to any color, you would be tinting it. If you add gray, you would be adding tone. If you were to add black, you will be adding shade to the color. This is very important as we start to explore color a lot more deeply with the Adobe tools. And you'll even start to see some of the color palettes named this way, tints and shades. So it's important to know. Speaking of color palettes, so color palettes are combinations of color. And the examples that I provided here are based on where the colors live on the color wheel. So you've ever heard of a monochrome palette? Mono means one, chrome or chroma means color. So one color is a single color palette. You can have a picture that has a single color that represents every other color in that photo. That is called a monochromatic palette. One color only. Then there's a complementary color palette. That means you're using two colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. Then there's a color palette called split complements, where you're choosing one color, and instead of using its direct complement, you're picking the two colors that are on both sides of it on the color wheel. So that is called a split complement. There are triad palettes that choose three colors evenly spaced apart on the color wheel. So there are three colors between purple and orange, three between orange and the green, and then three between the green and the purple. That triangular selection of color is called a triadic palette. Then there are analogous palettes. That means that you're choosing two or more colors that are right beside each other on the color wheel. Analogous. Mutual complements means that you are choosing a triadic palette and including the complement in between one pair of complements. So here's complement, and then you're also choosing a triadic shape palette. So it's called a mutual complement. Then you have near complements. So here is an example of two colors, not the exact complement, but the color next to it. That is called a near complement. And then there are double complements. You're choosing two colors beside each other on the color wheel, analogous colors, and their respective complements. And that's called a double complement. And it's called double because you're choosing two. Here's another representation of even more color palettes. We've talked about the triadic color palette or the triangle shaped color palette. Here's also another. This is called a tetradic, like tetra 4, tetradic rectangle palette, where you're choosing four colors based on the rectangular shape that is created by connecting all four of them in the color wheel. And lastly, you have what's called a square palette, where the four colors are selected based on the shape of a square that connects all four. There are all kinds of psychologies attached to color. This color wheel that includes psychology is based on how we interpret color here in the United States. Not every culture or country has the same associations with color as we do here in the United States. So this is just mainly for us in the United States. And I have to say that because if you were to go to another country and you were asked to design something that's meant to communicate purity, let's say in China, if you were to use something to represent purity in China, you might say to yourself, I'm going to make this white because we believe white to be pure here in the United States. But in China, they associate white with death. So it has an entirely different meaning. So here's this color psychology of the color wheel for our associations here in the United States. Here's another representation of that's a little cleaner. It just gives you a glimpse of some psychologies attached to the most common colors that you can use to your advantage when you're designing and choosing color for your projects. And then I just wanted to include some examples of how color really matters in the real world. So when you think about the color blue, you see a lot of banks adopt the color blue. Some of the largest social media platforms adopt the color blue. That's because in the United States, we have these associations with this color blue. We believe blue to be trustworthy. We believe blue to represent security, reliability. We don't trust blue to represent quality, that's for sure. We don't trust blue to represent courage, ironically. Nobody trusts blue to represent speed, right? So as designers, we use this color psychology to communicate these ideas that people share in common. And that's how and why we're able to communicate so quickly with color. We use the information based on people behavior and communicate the ideas we need people to believe to make them buy products or order something from a menu or believe we are who we say we are based on the colors that we choose. If this really interests you, there's also a link where you can read a full article from this company code schedule in full. So have a look at that. Click on that if this is something that really interests you. I personally am fascinated by this small level of mind control. Another real world application of how designers choose color is looking at, again, how people behave. And this particular chart is based on gender. So there are some colors that different gender roles respond to more than others. Most everybody responds favorably to blue here in the United States. Most people aren't favorable to the color brown. Probably think of dirt, mud, soil, earth. We're not going to look for brown when we're hungry, when we want to choose the best soap. We're just not going to look to the color brown. But at least here, especially over here in the least favorites charts, if you were designing something for a man, he's going to respond, much more favorably to, say, red than a woman might, right? By a small percentage. For the most part, these are pretty much the same how people respond to color and what they prefer to see around them. So this is just another real world application of how color communicates instantly, quickly, and how designers use it in their toolbox. So on to the assignment. So today, you're going to start your next project. It is an Adobe Fresco practice activity where you are going to create a comic style portrait. If you click on this link, it'll take you to a website that I'll review in a second video with small video guidance, lots of text guidance for you to complete this project. The way that I want you to color this project is I want you to choose a color palette to adopt for your final coloring portrait. So the file that I'm going to give you that's included in the assignment includes this image only, just the man with the hat, with the letters on the hat. Everything else that you see here was added by this particular artist, and it was colored by this particular artist. I'm going to ask you to provide your own painterly background that includes a pattern, a shape, some text, as well as a motion element. So all of the things that we learned about for the fresco portrait, all the things that we learned about for the fresco tutorial, I want you to also include in this single composition for this comic style portrait. So I'm going to stop here with the presentation, and then I'm going to pick up at the website where you can get a little guidance on completing this assignment, as well as how to create the color palette that you need. So stay tuned.